Terrible story. In Morocco, a girl has killed herself rather than marry her rapist, as was ordered. Religion of Peace News with the great Robert Spencer. Robert, welcome back to the show. I've said this before, when there's no crime or violence committed in the name of Islam, we'll give up doing this sort of stuff on the show. Tell us about this particular story, please.
Well, what this was somebody who was raped, and then the court ordered her to marry the rapist. Now, see, this just indicates what we see all the way through Islamic law regarding women and regarding marriage and so on, that it's the responsibility for morality is entirely on the woman, and anything that happens is entirely her fault, and that includes rape. The problem with rape is not that a woman is raped. The problem with rape in the Islamic scheme of things, according to Islamic law, is that she has, by her sexual immorality, sullied the honor of her family. Now, that can be corrected by her marrying the rapist, which is what they tried to get her to do in this poor case, in this horrible case in Morocco. But another thing that often happens is that the woman is simply killed to cleanse the honor of the family.
It defies belief. And this is not Saudi Arabia. This is North Africa. This is a country that has also a fairly strong secular tradition. Is this usual in Morocco?
Well, no, you're absolutely right. Morocco has a reputation for being moderate, for being a very open-minded and expansive kind of Islamic society. But Islamic law is pretty much consistent in these cases all around the world. As a matter of fact, people talk all about how Islam is not a monolith and we can't generalize about Islam, and there's so many different forms of Islamic law, Sharia. Actually, Michael, the various schools of Islamic jurisprudence, the madhab, they agree on 75 to 80% of pretty much everything. And the areas in which they disagree are not the ones that non-Muslims consider to be the most horrific. That is, the laws about warfare against unbelievers and the subjugation of unbelievers, the institutionalized oppression of women. Those things are matters of consensus, of ijma in Islamic law. And so you have this case in Morocco. It's true, it's not Saudi Arabia, but Islamic law is the same where it is enforced in Morocco as it is in Saudi Arabia.
Now, Rush Limbaugh called a liberal activist a slut. I certainly wouldn't have used that word. However, he did. There were endless calls and screamings for him to be attacked, boycotts of his show. He was a terrible man. He was worse than Hitler. A young woman has killed herself because she was told she had to marry her rapist. Has this led to international campaigns to boycott Morocco, to throw them out of organizations, to bring people to justice?
We're absolutely inured to this. The human rights organizations don't care. The Western feminists don't care. I've chronicled this over the years at Jihad Watch, Michael. The Western feminists are really incredible about it. You see all these feminists who are very quick to criticize Christianity, criticize Judeo-Christian values, criticize the West, United States and Canada and Europe for its alleged mistreatment of women. But when you come to Islam, then they suddenly start making excuses, and they say women who are wearing burqas, who are essentially slaves of their husbands, well, they're happy, and so it's okay. And it seems clear that the idea of multiculturalism trumps feminism.
Goodness me. Now, again, we're always accused of taking one incident, which is incredibly rare, out of context and making it seem what it isn't. But if we dealt with a fraction of the stories we could about Islam internationally, both in the Islamic heartland and the Islamic diaspora, if you like, in the Western world, that's all we would cover. This is not uncommon when women are raped, as you mentioned earlier, throughout the Islamic world. I mean, you will have sometimes families who will try to protect the woman, maybe allowed out of the country, but generally rape leads to deny it ever happened, the man is never brought to justice, hide the shame. We have no idea how many rapes take place because it's often just completely hidden by the Islamic community.
Oh, that's quite right, Michael. And you take a place like Pakistan, a few years back. See, rape is a crime of zina, which is sexual immorality in Islamic law. It's classified as within that purview. And that means that you have to have 4 male Muslim witnesses who saw the act in order to establish that it actually happened. Now, what rapist is going to perform his rape in front of an audience? It makes it essentially impossible, such that if a woman accuses someone of rape and he denies it, her testimony is inadmissible in cases of zina according to Islamic law. And so if she ends up being pregnant, then, or even her own words can be self-condemning, and she ends up being convicted of adultery because of the accusation of rape or the fact of the rape itself. And the vast majority of women who are in prison in countries like Pakistan are there because they were raped.
And in countries like Britain, Australia, parts of Scandinavia and France, there are Islamic rape gangs. There are girls who are groomed to become prostitutes. Even men who've lost their religion. They're no longer practicing Muslims, but they've still held on to part of that cultural imperative and still treat women as objects.
And especially unbelieving women, Michael. You know, it's a terrible thing, and people think, oh no, this must be something that these racist, bigoted Islamophobes are making up. But it's really actually well established in Islamic law. And there were a couple of Islamic spokesmen, and high-profile Islamic spokesmen, who on television in Egypt and one in Kuwait, just last year, they reaffirmed that sex slaves were something that was completely permissible within Islam, that Muhammad had taken them, that the Quran in chapter 4, verse 3 says a man can have 4 wives as well as the captives his right hand possesses, that is, sex slaves. And these people, these spokesmen, just last year were saying we ought to revive this practice. This is a perfectly Islamic practice. We should capture the Kuwaiti, a woman actually was saying, we should capture unbelieving women in Chechnya and use them for this. Robert, this is why we see these gangs.
I wish we had more time. We're going to have you back on the show. Thank you so much, as always.
Thank you, Michael.